Yep, so your plywood, not only does it hold all your materials for roofing on there, your plywood basically helps stabilize the structure. So underneath that plywood, you have multiple rafters, trusses, you have ridge beams, you've got just different cuts and pieces of the framing construction of the roof. So the plywood, not only does it give it that flat layer, it also stabilizes everything. And the plywood's usually locked together, whether it's offset, and they have little tabs that basically keep those plywood sheets flat together so you don't get any curling. But that material is the first layer that goes on. Some of your older homes will have 1x boards. You know, there'll be a 1x12s or they could be multiple boards, 1x3s, 6s, 8s, all together. If you have an old home like that, chances are when you get a roof replacement, you're going to need sheeting. You're going to need plywood over the whole roof. I'd say half of them we get away with not doing it because the boards are tight together. So our rule of thumb is the boards are touching and you cannot slide a nail through the crack, then they're tight enough to go ahead and nail new shingles to. If I can drop a nail right through that little slot, then we can't nail that. Because if a nail lands on that and that's where that shingle has to be, that nail's going to blow right through the shingle, then you're going to have a leak or you're going to have a potential leak. So we definitely would want to replace, not so much replace that plywood or the 1x's completely. Sometimes one side may be good, the other side needs to be torn off and sheeted. So we will price that out in your estimate to give you an idea of what that would cost. But not every house needs it. Most of your houses that are 40 years and newer don't have 1x's. They're going to have plywood. Some have plywood, some have OSB. And the difference is one strand board versus layered sheets. It's not anything major, but I've used both woods in multiple industries. Plywood's nice. It's lightweight. It's more solid veneers of wood. However, it does delaminate easier and it can curl easier and bend easier, whereas OSB typically doesn't curl like that. OSB is just chunks of wood glued together, a lot of resins, and so long as they're not exposed to the elements, they'll last as long or longer than plywood. And I feel they give you a flatter surface to nail down to, and they're more consistent. I've dealt with a lot of plywood where, especially the quality nowadays, where there's parts of it that have just hollow sections in it. So when you throw a nail through it, it blows through the whole thing. I've had parts delaminate. So it just depends on the quality and of what you get. But when you're trying to roof a house for a customer and they have a budget, OSB is going to be the best valued product for them versus double the money for a piece of plywood that doesn't give them any benefit, whether it's for heating and cooling or a benefit for price. So it's usually $3 a square foot install price, and that's going to be for material, labor, tear off disposal. So next step after plywood, we get into underlayments, and there's a couple different underlayments. You have your basic underlayment, which is your felt paper, and they have those in different weights and grades depending on what you're putting on. They'll come in 15, 30 pound. Those weights are just thicknesses of materials. So when that gets put down on the wood, general construction, you would put that felt paper on, then the next thing would be your drip edge, and then your shingle system. But here in Illinois, we do a couple other steps because of a lot of ice and water and snow around this area. So code required is ice and water barrier. It's an asphalt product. It's got a sticky backer on it, so that would be the first thing that goes on that front edge of the plywood. So that gets ran across all your lower eaves. Needs to be at least 2.5 feet, 2 feet inside that inner wall. So if you have real long eaves, you might have to have 2 to 3 rows of that material on your eaves, as well as all the valleys, anywhere there's any protrusions to the roof, and any of your 312 pitches or less, it's got to have ice and water on the complete section. We also recommend doing ice and water anywhere there's going to be solar panels on the complete section. But after that ice and water is on the lower section of the house, then that's when the synthetic underlayment comes in. So opposed to the felt paper, whereas it has a shorter lifespan, not as durable, the synthetic is thinner, so it doesn't add any thickness to the shingle system. It's also watertight, and it is a 6-month exposed elements, just premium barrier. Cost used to be very expensive, so it wasn't used previous 20 years ago. The material was very new then and very costly, and being experience for the first time. So after weather testing it, running it in the field, years of use, all the premiums have came down. Now it's almost a regularly used product. Most of our competitors use the product. Some competitors still use felt paper because of cost, and they're just really getting down to the penny. But we're not that competitor. We like to put premium products on. We're not the cheapest company in town. We're definitely not the most expensive. We pride ourselves in quality work, making sure that you're happy, and being able to service that product when it's done. Those are the biggest things in any business. I mean, nothing's made to last forever. I've been in the appliance industry before, cabinet industry before. It's the same stuff. You're going to have product failure over time, or errors that happen over time, or elements of weather, accidents happen over time. You just need somebody there when you call to come out and service you, be able to take care of that problem. But as for the materials, we've got synthetic underlayments. We use those standard. That's in our system, and that's what helps get that 50-year warranty versus when you use your felt papers and you don't use ice and water barrier, then you're stuck with your 25 to 30-year warranty on a system. Is there any cost savings to that? Not really. I mean, we're talking in a whole job, maybe $100 or $200 in the difference in cost of felt versus synthetic. So there's no reason to go downgrade and lose 20 years worth of warranty. So that felt paper to me is kind of obsolete for what we do. If a customer requests it and that's what they're comfortable with, I mean, we will do that, and we will match the warranty accordingly. So after we do the synthetic underlayment and it's tagged down, then we would obviously have their drip edge. It's a metal edge. It goes all the way around the roof system. It typically goes on before the ice and water, but there's some cases where it has to go on after. If it does, the ice water has to wrap around that front edge of the plywood. The drip edge is a metal edge that essentially lets that water come off the system and then not be able to get back into the wood. So that edge protects the wood edge so it doesn't ever swell or get moist and then rot out. So the fascia tucks up underneath that. So it's a layered system. The whole roof system is just shedding water. No different than when you look at a mountain. The top of the mountain's pointed, and there's little areas and valleys down that mountain where water channels, but ultimately water comes down that mountain no matter what, and everything sheds it away. If there's ground obviously underneath and there's no plastic, then water can flow through the ground. So if you want to keep water from getting in something, you put plastic down. And so in other words, if you're trying to shed water away from something, you cover it. And your house is the same way. So starting with the very sides of your house, you would have siding. Underneath it's underlayments. But when that siding gets up to the edge of the house, then you have your eaves that go over the siding to protect it so water can't get behind it. And at the very outside of that house, you have your fascia, and that fascia metal is what protects the edge of your house, and it covers the side, the wood, the exposed elements. And that drip edge overlaps the fascia, and it protects water because water really can't go back up. Now, the only time water can go up is if it freezes in front of it and starts heading back in. And again, that's why we use ice and water barriers. So if it does freeze up in a gutter or in a low valley and that water starts to build up backwards, it can't get underneath the material and ruin the decking. The water will shed out after it melts and it'll get off the roof. Even if it gets under the shingle, it will still exit the roof system without penetrating into the wood. So very important steps, and if they're done wrong, they can completely ruin a whole roof system. So it definitely has to be done right, and some of it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you can look at it and tell that's how it goes, but if you've never done it, you may not know why. So it's good to see it visually because then you understand what it's doing and why it's there and why you bought it.